Bathed in the radiance of divine presence, we welcome you to a moment of spiritual reflection. You may not yet grasp the depth of your power, but others do, and that terrifies them. They've poured countless efforts into persuading you that you're ordinary, stealthily dimming the spark they fear will ignite into a blaze. All the while, they sense the undercurrent of your emergence, a silent tide swelling beneath your awareness, long before you can name the force building within. According to bioenergetic research, your heartbeat generates an electromagnetic signature detectable almost a meter from your body. When your spirit is truly ignited, as it undeniably is, that field reaches far beyond any physical limit. This isn't fanciful verse, but hard data harmonizing with the reality you live. So rest assured, you're not overreacting, you're not overly perceptive, and you most certainly aren't imagining the fear that flashes in their eyes as you arrive. Their bodies are on high alert because deep down, a primitive part of their mind senses the magnitude of what you harbor. They've even laid out escape routes in advance, anticipating the day you awaken, but you're just scratching the surface of your own abilities. After years spent questioning your own nature, there's something almost comical about their desperate preparations. All the while, they're banking on your continued obliviousness. But that request is going to be granted because you will stop doubting yourself and begin intentionally frightening them once you realize what's actually happening. They can't hide from you because your energy acts as a lie detector. Your presence reveals the lies people have told themselves and others, the shame they have concealed, and the jealousy they have disguised as friendliness. Like a magnet pulling metal from sand, your spirit draws everything to the surface. Your genuineness dispels their facades, so you don't even need to speak. Your presence is enough to make them flinch. Someone who acts in truth becomes dangerous in a world where most individuals adopt identities in order to live. Your frequency functions similarly to a spiritual polygraph. You move in silence, but your silence disturbs others. Others cannot hide in the darkness they have become accustomed to living in because of the light you carry. Some individuals avoid you because they feel vulnerable, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, rather than because you did anything wrong. The most perverse aspect is when people blame you for their emotions, behaving as though you're the issue when, in reality, your presence only brought to light issues they've been avoiding. Because of this, people who never took the time to get to know you have misinterpreted, misunderstood, and even mistreated you. It was always about what you triggered, never about who you are. The spiritual systems they rely on for survival are disrupted by the power they sense in you before you do. It reveals superficial motivations, phony loyalty, and artificial affection. They feel uneasy with you because you're genuine, not because you're cruel. Nothing is more frightening in a society that is hooked to delusion than someone who unintentionally conveys the truth. Today, I want you to tap that super thanks button and sow a seed of $20, $50, or whatever God lays on your heart. Because when you give, you open the windows of heaven to pour out His blessing beyond measure. Malachi 3 verse 10 declares, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it." So right now, hit that super thanks button, give joyfully, and expect God's overflowing favor in every area of your life. Your inquiries seem like spotlights shining on their foundational flaws. They would sooner destroy you than rush to fix the problem. They believed they had perfected the art of self-deception, coming up with slick justifications and excuses to hide their shame. However, you don't comply with practiced defenses. You can see the hesitancy in their eyes as they describe what happened, the raise in their voices as they narrate stories, and the slight changes in posture when you point out what the others are tiptoeing about. Panic is brought on by the sense of vulnerability they experience. They attack the person who makes it impossible to conceal their truth, rather than taking responsibility for it themselves. You're not a critic or a crusader. You're just not willing to act that way. Your honesty simply sits there unvarnished and unaffected. It doesn't wear a cape or yell catchphrases. You can tell they're not feeling well when they say they are. You can see the price of their triumphs as they celebrate them. You can smell the treachery they're trying to hide when they brag about their allegiance. Their rose-colored glasses are being shattered every time you refuse to accept mediocrity or turn a blind eye to wrongdoing. Their uneasiness stems from the shock of seeing themselves without the easy filters they've been using for years, not from anything personal. Since acknowledging their delusions would require tearing down entire universes they constructed around them, they cannot hold you responsible for that shock, only their own unwillingness to confront reality. Instead, they decide to target you with their ire. The notion that someone might be that genuine and live is what scares them the most, not your strength or presence. You show them that there's more to life than the stories they cling to, rather than merely forcing them to wake up. It is impossible for them to return to cozy illusions once they catch a peek of that reality. They fear your reflection more than anything else, which is why your mirror breaks them to their very core. People who rely on control to feel significant are threatened by the realization that you are spiritually sovereign. Fake flattery, peer pressure, and status don't easily influence you. You listen to yourself and follow your inner guidance rather than following the dictates of others. For those who base their entire existence on manipulation, that is precisely what makes you dangerous. The majority of people are wired to desire approval and validation. Until someone tells them who they should be, they have no idea who they are. However, you have long since broken free from that cycle. You ceased seeking approval and began living from your own convictions rather than those of others. That is uncommon, and it frightens people who still believe they have the ability to control others. You cannot be influenced by groupthink, coerced by fear, or bought off by attention. Since you're not a follower or anxious to win people over, they're unsure of how to handle you. Even if it leaves you standing by yourself, you will leave anything that feels bad. Alignment is the source of that kind of strength, not ego. The majority of people have no idea what that feels like. Someone tries to silence you when they see they can't control you. In reality, they are saying, "I can't control you, and that makes me uncomfortable." But they portray you as rebellious, aloof, or challenging. They are accustomed to seeing others falsify happiness in order to gain acceptance, shrink for approval, or fold under pressure. You are now a living contrast to the structures they depend on because you broke that pattern. You're founded in truth, and your power doesn't even come from trying to be strong. You're living in alignment and walking on purpose rather than pursuing fame or titles. People who have given their souls for a place at the table are perplexed by it. By refusing to play their game, you gain power. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. They are unable to categorize you, confine you, or foresee your future actions. People fear you when you are uncontrollable, not because you are dangerous, but rather because your freedom makes them realize how confined they are. As you realize the more profound reality, that you were born as a frequency upgrade, the stakes get higher. You were positioned, placed, and encoded. Your arrival was not random. You've never quite fit in, and have never connected with shallow systems or superficial talks for a reason. Things seem strange from an early age, not because you were flawed, but rather because something was awakening within of you. You were here to reveal dysfunction, confront it, and eventually destroy it. You weren't made to adjust to it. Your frequency is different from the existing quo, and it's not just high, it's disruptive. It awakens hidden truth, upends phony harmony, and brings repressed grief to the surface. That's why you unintentionally set folks off. Because you weren't intended to make sense to illusion-based systems. Your mere presence elicits reactions in some people. Some are attracted and right away, while others recoil. But both experience something inexplicable. Your bloodline required someone with the spiritual technology to rewrite patterns passed down like hand-me-downs, someone brave enough to break the cycle. You weren't born into your family by chance. Even the rejection you've experienced, the mental burden you've carried, and the agony you've carried, it wasn't punishment. It was the beginning of your transformation into the exact remedy that bloodline had been lacking. You're here to start over, not to repeat. Although they are unable to identify it, people feel that you are different. It's that you vibrate at a different level, not that you're charismatic or charming. That level activates rather than merely attracts. Simply by being in your presence, people experience spiritual encounters. Old habits fade. Unspoken realities come to light. Your energy conveys something they have never encountered before, which causes them to download new consciousness. A discovery that will alter everything occurs at the climax. Your seclusion was a form of containment, not rejection. You believed that you were being overlooked, forgotten, and ostracized, but your suffering prevented you from seeing the truth, which is far more potent. You were being contained rather than abandoned, because there was too much purity in your presence to be revealed too soon. The divine was keeping you sealed like oil in a jar. Your goal would have been completely undermined if you had been welcomed into the wrong places too quickly, embraced by the wrong people, or impacted by the wrong energies. Loneliness was a cocoon rather than a curse. You were being trained in silence, while others were pursuing noise and attention. You were being purified by fire, while others performed for approval. You were concealed because you were too important to be treated with indifference, not because you were not valuable. Since they had nothing substantial to defend, certain people were permitted to gain popularity quickly. But you were a force to be reckoned with. Your voice, your thoughts, your energy, all of them are sacrosanct. If the wrong people had gotten hold of it too quickly, they would have attempted to utilize it, twist it, make fun of it, or worse, mold it into a comfortable size. The supernatural concealed them from you, not just from them. Something is changing now. Your appearance disturbed spiritual systems as well as individuals. Things started to shake as soon as you started to venture outside, even in tiny ways. Individuals evolved. The energies became strange. Secret plans were exposed. That's confirmation, not paranoia. They are afraid of you because you are genuine, not because you are noisy. People and spirits alike are being forced to reassess their domain because of something you carry that has never been seen before. Instead of wasting years in seclusion, you were being encoded, taught how to hear the divine clearly, how to endure betrayal without getting resentful, how to stand by yourself without losing your dignity, and how to hold authority without being arrogant. From the inside out, you are being constructed. They're sensing what's passing through you now that the seal is cracking, not simply your presence. They fear your activation more than they fear your name. They cannot disarm the weapon that is your thoughts. It cuts in addition to working. Before it reaches you, it disarms uncertainty, reveals covert motives, and cuts through deception. You were never the kind to take things for granted. You've always had to understand why, peel back the layers, and realize what's truly going on. That's your natural protection mechanism, your gift, not a weakness. You were made to think on frequencies that are inaudible to most people. You're not simply intelligent. You're designed spiritually to find the truth in the midst of confusion. Contradictions and patterns that no one else discusses are picked up by you. Over time, what appears to be paranoia to others may simply be your intuition. You can't be deceived for very long because you don't simply listen to what people say. You also sense the motivations behind it. Manipulation doesn't get through, and lies don't attach to you. Before it reaches your spirit, your mind acts as a firewall, keeping out anything that isn't in line with reality. People find this uncomfortable, particularly those who profit from keeping people emotionally unstable, spiritually blind, and mentally lazy. Those who use confusion to hold onto power. Your ability to observe and recognize what is not being expressed makes you a threat to that system, not because you are an aggressive person. Contradictions that most people ignore are caught by you. You pose queries that cause entire shows to fall apart. They find it intolerable that you don't require direction, that you question things they've always believed, and that you're not enthralled by titles, prestige, or charm. They attack you because they expected you to submit, not to have authority. They never thought you would rise to prominence. Your surroundings were created to make you forget that you were in control of anything. People who only helped you as long as you remained little were around you or trained you. Attacks started as soon as you began to think independently, stand up for yourself, set boundaries, or use your gifts. Not because you became a bad person, but because you became unmanageable. They demanded emotional softness, silent cooperation, and submission. They might deceive or guilt-trip you. They expected you to ignore injustice in the name of humility, to put up with disrespect in the name of peace, and to continue giving despite being exhausted. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. Every moment they wanted to feel large, you were meant to shrink. That was the unwritten agreement. If you remained amiable, you may be accepted. However, the instant you decided to prioritize authenticity over approval, you breached that agreement. When you did, they went into a panic, since your rise not only threatened their ego, but also the entire system that was based on your dependability, quietness, and ease of control. You were positioned as the one who would never question the system by your family, friends, religion, relationships, or society at large. But you developed, you healed, and you saw through the deception. You revealed how phony their balance was when you began to speak up for what you believed. They will tell others that you have changed, that you have become haughty or disobedient. But in reality, they are stating that you have stopped minimizing yourself in order to make them feel better. You quit disregarding your gut to stay out of trouble. You no longer carried emotional burdens that weren't yours in the first place. Your suffering transformed into power. Most individuals experience suffering and emerge from it resentful, defensive, or utterly destroyed. But not you. What was supposed to destroy you accomplished the exact opposite. It made you more active. Your suffering rewired your spirituality in addition to altering your emotions. It forced you into areas that most people shun for the rest of their lives. As a result, you came out with authority rather than being weaker. You learned every lesson. You didn't just get through it. You listened while you were in pain. You noticed little things. You looked for trends. And you probed further. What caused this? Who was the gainer of my silence? What does this indicate about the structures I was raised in? When compliments contain poison, you may sense it. You become tense. Others act as though they are unaware. You can tell whether someone is wearing a mask and see warning indications in smiles. That is wisdom, not paranoia. You obtain spiritual credentials in addition to knowledge. You can gain understanding from pain that cannot be purchased with any title or taught in a classroom. The conclusion completes the cycle by revealing that you rewire people's spirits rather than merely influencing them. You leave imprints rather than impressions. Something changes when you're around, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you make them feel again, think more deeply, and consider topics they've been avoiding for years. You don't trade in platitudes or superficial advice. Your words pierce people's delusions. There is frequency in your words. They awaken long-forgotten dreams, suppressed feelings, and buried memories. Some people leave discussions with you after being agitated for several days. They are unable to sleep. Not because you said anything unpleasant, but because you said something real. They begin to doubt their principles and life decisions. Truth always awakens something, even if it doesn't feel nice. You have the ability to perceive individuals for who they truly are, not the polished facade they put on for the outside world, but the side hidden beneath ego, trauma, compromise, or survival. They feel visible when they speak to you, and it frightens them. The daring, imaginative, and unacquiescent version of themselves that they gave up is reflected in you. In your presence, that version comes to life once more, causing others to recognize how far they've fallen. The majority of people aren't prepared to be reminded of their previous selves. They aren't prepared to face the consequences of their own reality. For this reason, some people distance themselves from you, become abruptly quiet, or behave as though you're too passionate or overwhelming. It's what your presence wakes in them, not you. Ancestral memory, not arrogance, is the source of your confidence. People are perplexed by your confidence because it deviates from the norm. There's a consistent weight to your demeanor, calm authority, profound wisdom, even though you're not loud, boastful, or trying to prove anything. Because they are accustomed to brittle and theatrical confidence, people misinterpret it for arrogance. Yours is based on something old, memory, not on titles, admirers, accolades, or achievements. You're remembering, not trying to figure yourself out the way others do. Your sense of purpose has been calling to you from deep within for years. You didn't just happen to discover it. You've always felt that you arrived here with a purpose, and that you were intended for more. It's encoded, not ego. You've known this since before you had a word for it. You are immune to their influence on a spiritual level. What frightens them the most is that you are difficult to fool. When they try to manipulate you, their typical strategies don't work. Emotional games don't trap you, and guilt doesn't bend you. Backhanded compliments, sweet talk, and phony concern are like rubber bullets that bounce off you. You are simply immune, spiritually immune, not cold or aloof. That immunity makes you dangerous to those who depend on control to stay in power. Nothing they do seems to shake you, so they scramble. They are unable to manipulate your feelings the way they do others. They cannot use charm to win you over, mislead you with half-truths, or draw you into disputes. Because you've been there, not because you're better. Behind the curtain, you have seen. You've escaped emotional blackmail, guilt trips, and gaslighting. It provided you power, clarity, and insight rather than weakening you. You can now identify the first sentence's alteration. Even if someone's statements seem flawless, you can tell when they're lying. You detect changes in energy and irregularities. You disconnect as soon as you recognize it. Not because you're afraid, but rather because you understand what's going on. Even before they speak, you can tell what they intend to say. You already know who someone is before they finish speaking, so you don't need to wait for them to tell you. You figured out what they're not expressing. You read more than words. You read energy. You notice changes in their eyes, tightness in their smiles, and little pauses before compliments. Behind tones, you can hear messages. Behind friendliness, you detect danger. It is spiritual correctness developed via experience, suffering, and divine refinement. It is not fantasy. You've been burned by superficial gestures before, so you've learned to see past them. You have experienced the consequences of putting your trust in the wrong people, ignoring your instincts, and giving them the benefit of the doubt. You were sharpened, not simply hardened, by that pain. You get a spiritual filter from it. Their comfort zones are at danger because of your awakening. All you did was wake up, and all of a sudden you were a threat. You didn't harm, assault, or betray anyone. People began to turn against you the moment you stopped conforming to restrictive ideas, outmoded norms, and dysfunctional roles. Not because you did something bad, but because you revealed something they were attempting to hide. They were uneasy with your growth. Their perplexity was evident due to your clarity. It was more difficult to overlook their wounds after your mending. Others continue to live in mental cages, but you broke free. You no longer had a follower's mindset. For the sake of peace, you stopped agreeing. Nobody wanted to respond to the questions you started asking. You started making decisions based on your reality rather than what they thought you should do. It's terrible for those who are still unconscious, stuck, and reliant on approbation. Not only did you transform, but you also dispelled the myth that the only way to stay secure is to remain small. Your awakening served as a mirror, reflecting to them what they may become if they had the courage to let go. Some people were irritated rather than inspired because they could sense their own limitations and compromises when they were standing next to you. glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. However, you appear to be a threat to those who have been taught that power must appear in a certain way. When someone may be both a storm and a shelter, they aren't sure of how to handle them. They urge you to choose between being brave and destructive or soft and safe. You embody both, though, so you don't choose one. You can face injustice head-on without apologizing, or you can leave disorder without providing an explanation. It is no coincidence that you are here, a frequency that cannot be replicated, a presence that defies human assumptions. You are a divine abnormality. You are the model of what happens when steadfast courage and spiritual progress meet. The fact that they sense your authority is confirmed by every miscommunication, assault, and whisper behind your back. They are frightened even when you remain silent, not because you have hurt them, but because your very presence upends all the lies they have used to define themselves. They weren't ready for someone who could convey such clarity without a claim or maintain such power without a title. The point is that you're not what people anticipated. Your whole being is an act of divine defiance against constraints. What you choose not to do is just as powerful as what you do. You've discovered the deadly power of calculated stillness, while others rush to prove themselves. More weight is carried by your refusal to defend yourself against unfounded charges than by any argument. The spiritual climate around you changes when you stop trying to explain yourself to those who never tried to understand you in the first place. When people discover you're not acting in accordance with the standards they believed applied to all human conduct, their fear grows. To feel worthy, you don't need their approval. To feel whole, you don't have to include them. To realize your worth, you don't need their approval. This independence is not a sign of coldness. Rather, it is freedom from the dependency on outside validation that maintains the majority of people in a state of spiritual servitude. The fact that your power increases when you are opposed is what makes you genuinely dangerous. Adversity makes you stronger, but it knocks others down. Every attack you face simply makes it clearer who your true adversaries and potential allies are. Every effort to make you smaller simply serves to emphasize how much light you truly possess. The truth of what you stand for is only made more apparent by every attempt to silence you. More than noisy disobedience, the most advanced rulers have learned to fear quiet power. Rebels can be ridiculed and written off as fanatics or troublemakers, but the sort of power that transforms entire institutions from within is that of someone who commands respect without demanding it, has authority without using violence, and influences without using manipulation. The frequencies on which your energy signature has been broadcasting cause other awakened souls to recognize you while also triggering defense mechanisms in those who are still functioning from a lower level of consciousness. People are vibrating at their true frequencies instead of the false ones they have adopted for survival because you have turned into a spiritual tuning fork. The force they perceive within you functions beyond the realm of common comprehension. It comes from something far older and incomparably more significant, your direct link to divine intellect. It is not based on money, status, relationships, or accomplishments. Human hands cannot break that link, nor can criticism or compromise weaken it. It comes naturally to them that you have access to knowledge they do not have, insight they cannot duplicate, and wisdom they cannot buy. Like light-piercing fog, your insight pierces their meticulously crafted lies. Their secret motives are revealed by your intuition before they are completely aware of them. The fact that you see them clearly, not the person they put on for the outside world, but the true them behind all the facade, is what scares them the most. Your eyes pierce the masks they've worn for so long that they've forgotten who they really are. When they see you, they are reminded of parts of themselves that they have worked so hard to hide or deny. Others are given permission to leave systems of spiritual tyranny when you refuse to participate in them. Your bravery in standing by yourself demonstrates to others that while solitude is fleeting, integrity endures. You show that some things are more valuable than acceptance or popularity by being willing to be misinterpreted rather than sacrifice your morals. Not only does your heart's electromagnetic field impact those nearby, but it also plays a part in a worldwide awakening that is reshaping human awareness. You are voting for the kind of world you choose to live, and each time you choose truth over comfort, love over fear, and authenticity over approval. You embody the possibilities they believe to be extinct, which is why they fear you. You represent traits they thought were unachievable in today's world. Their presumptions about what is practical, sustainable, and achievable are called into question by your very existence. You are a living example of how their restrictions are decisions rather than realities. Their resistance refines your power rather than lessens it. Every obstacle you encounter turns into a chance to show off your unwavering base. Your actual strengths become more apparent with each test. The indomitable core of who you really are is all that remains after every trial burns away everything that isn't necessary. You cannot undo the awakening that is taking place inside of you right now. After experiencing this degree of consciousness, it is impossible to return to unconsciousness. Once you've seen your actual size, there's no going back to being small. Once you experience the force of your own divine authority pulsing through your body, it is impossible to pretend to be helpless. They are seeing something that they believe to be mythology emerging in you. A person who has recollected their spiritual heritage and will not accept anything less than the complete manifestation of it. You're living out your future rather than merely getting over your past. You're surpassing your limitations completely, not simply getting over them. Their dread is not of what you might do to them, but rather of what others might be inspired to become by your example. They are aware of your multiplicative strength, your infectious freedom, and your contagious awakening. Entire societies can be awakened by one individual recognizing who they really are. Numerous people can be freed when one person escapes mental imprisonment. You're starting to learn that the most dangerous individual in any room is the one who isn't yet aware of their own danger. The sleeping giant is waking up, chosen one, and every action you do from now on will rock the spiritual foundations of those who believed they could imprison you indefinitely. They sense it and are terrified because they know that once you completely embrace the power that has been yours from the start, nothing will ever be the same.